Already subjected to constant bombardment by artillery, enemy sniper fire, and the awful living conditions, soldiers fighting in the muddy trenches of the First World War did not imagine their situation could get any worse. Then, from April 1915, a new nightmare began: gas warfare. Lethal poisonous gas was first used by the German army in the war, but it was soon adopted by all sides. Although there were often terrible and lasting consequences for the individual soldiers who experienced a gas attack, the weapon did not prove strategically decisive since wind and countermeasures like gas masks frequently negated its effects. Non-lethal tear gas, lacrimatory, was experimented with in the early part of WW1, but the first major assault using deadly poison gas was undertaken by the German army against French, Algerian, British, and Canadian troops in the afternoon of 22 April 1915 at the Second Battle of Ypres. This gas attack released 168 tons of poisonous chlorine gas from 500 special canisters. The attack was primitive since the German armies simply hoped the wind would spread the gas in the right direction, the enemy trenches. The gas killed 5,000 to 6,000 Allied soldiers and injured another 10,000 in just 10 minutes, either directly from the effects of the gas or because desperate men climbed out of the trenches trying to escape it and were consequently shot. The German commanders were surprised by the devastating effects of the gas, and so they were unprepared to take full advantage of the 5-mile or 8-kilometer gap caused by the new weapon. In addition, the attackers were understandably reluctant to advance into an area still containing gas, and, in any case, they had insufficient reserves to make a major breakthrough. It was to be the last such opportunity on the Western Front until the final stages of the conflict. The Allied reaction to the first gas attack was one of horror and outrage. The Hague Convention forbade the use of gas in projectiles, a wording which allowed the German authorities to disingenuously claim the release of gas from canisters was, therefore, not a breach of the rules of war. In any case, although widely regarded elsewhere as against the rules and rather cowardly, after Ypres all sides quickly adopted the weapon. Specialized units were formed to use gas in attacks, such as the Royal Engineers of the British Army. There were different types of gas used. Chlorine gas caused the tissue in the lungs to burn and soldiers to fall to the ground, convulsing, choking, and eventually dying. Victims effectively drowned as their lungs filled with liquid. A second type of gas, phosgene, also called green cross gas and first used in December 1915, was even more deadly and more feared because it was colorless and so could not be seen. Another peculiarity of phosgene was that the effects of this gas were often not felt until 24 hours after the attack. Phosgene accounted for the most gas fatalities during the war, 6 out of 7. A third type was mustard gas, or dichlorethyl sulfide, first used in July 1917, much less deadly but capable of causing severe injuries by destroying the lining of air tracts around the nose and mouth, limiting vision, and causing large and painful blisters on the skin. Mustard gas was also a more enduring weapon, since it formed into liquid pools on the ground that remained a hazard for weeks after the initial attack. The effects of gas were real enough, and some were long-term, affecting soldiers for years after the conflict had ended. But at the time, it was probably most effective as a psychological weapon. Certainly, most soldiers feared the lingering effects of an invisible gas more than those from a quick death by bullet or shell. The psychological impact was not only seen on the front lines, but also on the home fronts. When the Zeppelin bombing raids of World War I began, civilians in Britain and France feared not only that bombs would fall on them, but that poisonous gas would be used in the attacks. At home and in the trenches, notices warned people of the necessity of always carrying a gas mask, and above all, acting quickly to distance oneself from the gas and sound an alarm to warn others. As one poster starkly warned, there are two kinds of men in gas attacks, the quick and the dead. Gas warfare became a subject of anti-enemy propaganda, with the Allies not slow to milk the fact that Germany had used this terrible weapon first.
One of the most serious flaws with the use of gas was that variable wind direction could mean the deadly fumes were blown away from the enemy or even into the vicinity of one's own soldiers. This is exactly what happened to the British Army during its first attempt to use 5,000 canisters of chlorine gas at the Battle of Loos in September 1915. The development of gas-filled shells that could be fired at the enemy by artillery made the use of gas much more accurate. Mortar and protector shells were also developed to contain gas. Stockpiles of the weapon created yet another risk, since if gas canisters or shells were hit by an ordinary enemy shell, they would release the gas in the immediate vicinity. The first defense response to gas was to install gongs and bells in the trench systems so that at least soldiers could warn their comrades as soon as gas was detected. Soldiers soon realized that the gas tended to accumulate at the bottom of the trenches, and so stepping up on the firing parapet helped escape most of its effects, although this could also expose men to enemy fire. A damp cloth held over the face helped. Some Canadian soldiers found that urinating on a piece of cloth and holding it to the mouth negated the effects of the gas. Cloth soaked in bicarbonate of soda became a more attractive alternative. Some remedies proved even more deadly than the gas itself. An idea to use wet cotton pads, there was even a campaign to raise funds for these from the public, went badly wrong when it was discovered that many soldiers suffocated as a result. More substantial defenses against gas came in the form of hoods and gas masks. The Canadian doctor Clooney McPherson designed the first smoke helmet, which was essentially a cloth bag with eyepieces. The wearer breathed through a single tube, and this could be treated with chemicals that neutralized the poisonous gas. From August 1916, a gas mask with filter system became standard issue, the small box respirator mask. Animals were not forgotten, and both horses and dogs had specially made gas masks too. The attackers responded in turn to this new defense. Sometimes tear gas was fired at the enemy to make soldiers take off their gas mask, which were less effective against this type of gas, and so make them susceptible to the next wave of gas shells containing phosgene. All of these measures helped reduce the effect of gas attacks so that they only accounted for around 3 in 100 deaths over the duration of the war. Nevertheless, poisonous gas still accounted for 1 million casualties in World War I. After the war, some states and international bodies attempted to ban the use of chemical weapons in warfare. Not until 1925, the international law forbid the use of poisonous gas by any means. These efforts unfortunately have failed to prevent the occasional reappearance of poisonous gas in conflicts around the world ever since.
If you enjoyed this video and are still not subscribed, please consider it, as it really helps me out a lot. Thank you.